Hello and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. My name is Chris Ringler. I am the aforementioned Spooky Chris as we enter the dark times after Halloween. I thought I would talk about my new book briefly. I put a new book out just before Halloween, about 2 weeks before. That is available on Kindle and paperback through Amazon. You can probably order it through other folks as well, but that's who I go through in my self-publishing endeavors is Amazon. So I thought I would chat about that for a moment. Again, my name is Chris Ringler. Hopefully you found this on my website, spookychris.com. That is where you can find all the good stuff about me, all the links to my books, my movies, any weird short stuff, videos I've done, and links to stories, all kinds of stuff. It's a good thing. So, as I said, I put a new book out. This book is called Are We Monsters? It's something I had... So, last year in 2020, and during we're still in the heyday of the pandemic, if you ask me. But the heart of the pandemic, my wife was pregnant, and I was working from home, so I had a lot of time to kind of start thinking about the future with projects and stuff. And last year, I wrote a couple of books, and I started... I gathered the stories together for this book. I'm trying to think. I wrote a mystery. I wrote a fiction book that it came out earlier this year. I put together a book with a friend under the name, under the Shingle Goblin Holler. And like I say, I started collecting the stories for this book, Are We Monsters? It is an anthology of monster stories I had years ago. Written like a mummy story and a vampire story and something else, and a friend had said, "Oh, it'd be cool if you had a book like that." And I didn't really think about it for a long time, and then, as I say, last year, it occurred to me that it'd be fun to actually kind of do that. So I gathered some stories together, and this year, in the spring, I started to work on writing new stuff. While my daughter was still a wee little infant, and filled things out with newer content as well. One of the stories actually kind of ties into my novel Cemetery Earth, which is a zombie novel, and it's a zombie story, and in my mind, it ties into that in its own little way. But part of the thing too is I came across a quote that was "Hell calls to hell," and I loved that. I loved that idea that kind of evil calls evil, dark to dark, the kind of a thing. And so that was kind of an inspiration for some of this book. It's like I say, it's monster stories. Sometimes the monsters are supernatural. Sometimes they're human. Sometimes they're something else altogether. Whenever a writer puts out a book, you're like, oh gosh, I love this. This is a great book, because it's not like you're going to say this is a terrible book. This is a bunch of crap. Don't buy it. But I do like this book. I think it's pretty neat. It has definitely some of my favorite stories in it. Somebody I know actually had purchased it when it came out, and their favorite story is my favorite story in it, in which a young woman goes off to a bad part of the city and to a burned out house to find something to help her get revenge. And I just think it's a neat little creepy story. There's a story I had written a few years ago and read at the StokerCon I went to a couple years ago in 2019. So that's in there. So it's a pretty cool little mix. Some old, some new, some moldy stuff, some some new and shiny stuff. I think it was a perfect release for Halloween. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get physical copies in hand before an event that we just did, my fellow creeps and me, this past weekend. But I still think it's a book should stand outside of holidays, and it's not like it's a Halloween book. But I think it's a book perfectly timed for October and the fall months before you get to the holidays, where things are a little darker and a little creepier. It's funny because I had the inspiration for the cover for a while, and I wanted to use toy monsters in some kind of a way for the cover, and I think it turned out pretty neat. It wasn't what I pictured in my head, but that's not a bad thing. I think, if we're open to kind of going with the flow on this stuff, I think that's the best way to go about it. And as far as I'm concerned, it's weird. It's and I lose count, but it's around my 20th book to the public. I've written other books that were just for smaller audiences that weren't for wide release. So it's weird. It's weird to think that it was never my intention to have that many books out. I'm certainly not a followed author. I'm certainly not someone who people seek out, but it is my passion, and I want to put that out into the world for whatever that's worth. I see all the time, and self-publishing is a weird, hard little racket. I saw, I think it starts. I see all the time. You saw recently a small publisher kind of carping about how they, we send out form letters because we don't have the time. We're too busy. We don't have the time to send you a personal thing. And that to me it's funny because it's just like the jobs that you apply for. That, man, we're just too busy. We're not going to bother to tell you you're not getting the job. We're just going to ignore you. It's the same kind of a thing, and that's weird to me because it's the idea to me that I'm going to invest in you to some degree, even just interest, time, whatever. It's like a bargain. I'm going to give you a view into my passion. I'm going to see if you like it, and I'm going to hope for the best. And I certainly, when I was doing it, I didn't expect or need some big, long-winded, well, this part is good, but this part isn't good, and we think this could be better. I didn't need that. I don't think I didn't really want it. Because what one person's constructive criticism from afar could be the thing that wrecks somebody as a writer. And you need to have thick skin, as everyone says. You need to. But to kind of a parentheses and in parentheses, I had a teacher once who said one of the wisest things I've ever heard, hands down, and it was that honesty doesn't have to be brutal, and it shouldn't be brutal. It's kind of, honesty should stand on its own. If you say, oh, hey, it didn't work. Okay, cool. Why didn't it work? Well, it didn't work because of this. You don't have to say, well, this sucks, that sucks, you suck. There's a way to say something. There's a way to say something, and there's a way to say something that's not like, wow, you're great. Gosh, we just wish we were good enough as publishers to take your business, but man, you're just too good for us, and we just can't. No, you don't have to lie about everything. You don't have to lie, but you don't have to tell someone the truth with a hammer, kind of, if that makes sense. This silliness of oh, we just don't have time to send you a response. We send you a form letter. I mean, the very least someone can do is, hey, Joan, thanks for so much for submitting. I'm afraid it doesn't really work for what we're looking for. We wish you all the best. I get it. It's tedious. It's time consuming, but this is your job. You took it on. I didn't say it'd be fun. I didn't say it'd be easy. I didn't say it'd be, whatever. But you set all the parameters. The thing, and it's funny because this is supposed to be about my book. and I'll get back to it. But what I laugh about too is all of these indie presses. So many of them are, God, this is terrible to say, but it's true, kind of masturbatory. Because if you look to any depth, you'll find someone involved with the press is putting their own work out through it. And it doesn't mean it's bad, obviously. They could be geniuses. But it's funny because they are using their tent pole to kind of make sure that they don't get wet. And again, absolutely fine. It's just interesting, one, that self-publishing is still spat upon by some when these folks are just doing it on a more legitimate level, I guess. And two, it's interesting because these folks still kind of, they forget where they were when they didn't kind of have that opportunity, when they weren't getting published. It sucks. It sucks looking for someone. That's what drove me to self-publishing, is I was tired of the rejections and tired of the, like, people ignoring my stuff. Oh gosh, you need to submit to this and that. I could submit to 1,000 magazines and maybe a dozen or two would pick up on a story. But there's so many things, like they always say, oh, well, read our magazine to see what we publish. No. Why should I give you, I'm giving you business to see if you're interested. No, it's your job to decide if it's good for not, for you. That's what this is. Now, if I send a horror story or a cannibal story to Popular Mechanics, obviously I've barked up the wrong tree. But the whole rules of it all is just, it's still, and again, that is the thing of writing. Like, you can take my path, which ain't glorious in any capacity, and it's very rare that someone makes a living or gets famous as a self-pub. But it's that, or you can, like, I used to buy, every year I'd buy the new writer's guide, I would pour through it and try to find the small little, like, so here's all of the publishing firms. And then here's the smaller ones, like they do horror. And then these are the ones that do horror that I kind of do. And here's the ones that are open. And it's not many. Catching open windows for publishers is very, 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 very difficult. And most of them, like I say, there's so many publishers now, they have niches where it's like, we only publish vegan porn horror. Like, that's all we want. And that's just weird. And hard to find someone that suits you. I say, I write dark fiction. Okay, great. Is it vegan horror porn? No. Sorry, thanks, bye. So it's discouraging. I putting 20 books out, self-published. It's not where I wanted to be. I would love to have a publisher that was like that, got what I was doing and believed in it. But I have friends that had a publisher for a minute, and they had a publisher. They got a little bit of money, but the publisher didn't support the books. Well, they supported it for like a small window, and then they're forgotten. And they're just back catalog. And the person is back in charge of trying to sell their own books again. Just someone else is making a profit also off of them. And that's not great either. So I don't know what the chemistry is that makes all of this work, that is the best way to do it, that kind of how many shows should you do, how much advertising, how many submissions, and it's funny too, because I was published in things. I got, the smallest of notice, and it never did anything for me. And that was part of it too, that drove me to self-publishing. Is cool, I've been in books. Cool, I've been in a magazine. Cool, I've been on websites. Cool, I won Best in Blood on a website, like the best horror author of their that year for them. None of it drove sales. None of it got me people looking to even interview me, talk to me, meet me, want to work with me, want to publish me, anything. So you kind of can wait around for somebody else to light the match, or you can light it yourself. And that's kind of what I did with Are We Monsters? I had sat on it for a little bit. I hadn't had time to work on it. But I had a short stint where I was able to, and I just, it came together a lot quicker than I thought. And there was there was a point where there's no reason to sit on it and not put it out. So I did. I put it out. I think it's neat to wait for days, and I've done that. Like, that are meaningful to you or meaningful to the book. In this case, I just, there's no reason to wait. And it makes it made for a good Halloween read for the 2 or 3 people that got it. I dig it. I don't know if anyone else will. I don't know if you will. I think it's a cool, solid book. There's some neat monster stories. There's one about kind of a Frankenstein's monster. There's a vampire story. There's a sea creature story. There's a mummy story. It's a mad scientist story. I'm trying to think of everything else. Like I said, there's a little of a lot in there, and I think they're fun. And I think if you're into that stuff, I think you'll have a heck of a time with it. I hope you will check it out. Like I said, it's called Are We Monsters? It is available on Amazon as a Kindle or a paperback. It's $10. I've always worked to try to keep my books maybe 10 or maybe 12. I sell them personally for 10, but because of the markup with Amazon, I think it's 12. But I try to keep everything as inexpensive as possible because, again, like the point for me is to get these in your hands. I'm not going to get rich off of it, but you want someone to read your stuff, and that's what I want. I appreciate you, friend. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you'll check my stuff out. I posted a small, tiny little sample on my website, spookychris.com. There are stories on there. Otherwise, I think I actually did a podcast, a reading of Ball, the story I did at the Stokers. I think that's on there somewhere as a podcast. But take care. I will speak to you again soon. Farewell.